What is going on, my crazy 76er fanatics, guys? Thanks for stopping back in for another daily pod with your daily 76ers discourse and discussion. Guys, rise and shine and start your morning off the right way with a healthy dose of Sixer discourse. And today we're talking about Paul George, formerly known as PG-13. Right now it's PG-8, and PG has not been playing great while in Philadelphia. We need to cover what Paul George does bring to this squad, what Paul George will be asked to do for this team, and how Paul George will perform this year. Good news about the Paul George situation and scenario. PG is back on the court in the team settings and in team surroundings. Paul George was seen playing one-on-one with your Sixer players, Maxey, Oubre, Edwards. I mean, these guys were battling in this one-on-one session. And in the one-on-one session, Paul George seemed to be getting the best out of all of them. I'm talking about the best scorer on the court at times and in the windows what the video was taken. Paul George seemed unguardable, which is exactly the Paul George you hope the Sixers paid for and that you hope in Philadelphia that Paul George is going to play for Philadelphia. The unstoppable, the unguardable, the electrifying, the explosive Paul George. A few things in this video you saw. One, Paul George was this team's best offensive player from the forward and the wing position. Maxey was cooking them boys, of course. Maxey is unguardable one-on-one. But defensively, Paul George seemed to be the best defensive player in that one-on-one setting to get stops on Tyrese Maxey. Who is this team's best defender? Arguably, guys, it could be Paul George. Paul George could be this team's best 1-4 defender, and that's because he was an all-NBA defensive level player. He also has experience, over 13 years in this league, so over 13 years of understanding coverages, spacing, leverage, angles. Paul George defensively doesn't have the athleticism that the older or younger him would have, but as an older version of himself, he still has the IQ, he still has the understanding of the principles and fundamentals, and he also can teach. Hopefully, Paul George is able to teach Justin Edwards, VJ Edgecombe, these young players like Johnny Brome. Teach these young guys how not only to make the most out of their length, but if they're not athletic, then make their IQ their strength. As Paul George's athleticism has gone down, his defense efficiency has taken slight dips, but it hasn't been as extreme and hasn't been as vast as you would expect from a 34-year-old player in the league. Paul George still has all NBA defensive chops to get some all NBA defensive stops on the best players. And arguably, with VJ Edgecombe still being a rookie, with Quentin Grimes being a little undersized, with Kelly Oubre not necessarily being just the best at it, defense is something that Paul George has made his name known for, is the same way he was able to get on the court earlier on in his career. So I'm assuming that defense is something that Paul George is still able to do at a premium. What does Paul George bring to this team? Hopefully, a number one defender, if not number one, a number two defender, a guy that's able to guard some of the best stars in the league. You want Paul George potentially guarding Brunson and staying out of foul trouble, but just causing some havoc. You want Paul George to potentially step up against Shea. I know it's crazy to ask a 34-year-old plus player with over 14 years of experience in this league to guard the best players and to guard some of the youngest players. But with the way this team is currently constructed, Paul George is going to have to bring the defensive tenacity, because who else are you going to call? Who's a better two-way player on this team outside of Paul George? What he brings to this squad, hopefully elite and electrifying and efficient two-way play, because there's not another two-way or two-sided player on this squad who you think defensively you can count on him, and offensively you can rely on him. Paul George, arguably, guys, should be, could be, and if you're a Sixer fan and you're rooting for this team and you think this team could be a championship squad, he's going to have to be one of this team's, if not this team's, best two-way player. Outside of being a great one-on-one player that he still has, outside of still being potentially one of the best open shot makers and takers. Paul George brings experience to this team. Fourth quarter experience is something that you're not necessarily sure who has it outside of Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey was the focal point of this team, hasn't necessarily been relied on to be a consistent fourth quarter scorer. Fourth quarter scoring is another part of Paul George's game. Hopefully, hasn't dissipated completely. Hopefully, he still has. Paul George is going to be relied on heavily for this squad to be any good. Any good. Not to mention, arguably, this team's best defender. And looking at the way this roster is currently constructed, guys, we've got a lot of holes. We've got a lot of questions, and we've got a lot of roles to fill. Who will be cut from this roster is the question, because now that Quentin Grimes did re-sign the qualifying offer, this team has about $9 million to play with before they knock on that door of that first apron. And they've got a few more $1 million, like 17, before that second apron even comes into question. So with the way they can play with their money and with the way they have extra money that they probably didn't anticipate having this season, Daryl Morey could be not only fired, but he is under fire. This season, Nick Nurse not only could be fired, but is definitely under fire. So this season, I expect Nick Nurse, Daryl Morey to call Josh Harris and to have him mortgage that checkbook. So not only these guys potentially give themselves the best chance of keeping their careers and keeping their jobs, but give this team the best chance at winning finally. Because I don't think it's been a few seasons since this Sixers squad was willing to go all in on a championship run. It's been a few seasons since the James Harden, PJ Tucker days before this team is willing to go all in on a championship run. I think this is the season to go all in on it. And who will be cut? Well, because you have extra money, because you see what the free agent landscape is like, and because you see the holes this team has, there's no reason. There's no reason to keep Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry. If Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry both see the court this year, this Sixer team should be seeing the lottery once again. There's no reason to keep both of them. One of those players, Eric Gordon or Kyle Lowry, should definitely be on the chopping block. And if you're chopping one of them off, guys, maybe think about acquiring and adding a floor spacer in Malik Beasley. Spacing is something any team could use more of, and spacing is something this team isn't too sure of. When Jared McCain is injured, if Quentin Grimes finds an injury or just decides to be disruptive after he had to re-sign, spacing is something this team definitely needs. VJ Edgecombe isn't a bona fide guaranteed shooter. Kelly Oubre isn't a knockdown three-point shooter. So you're going to have to rely on 40-year-old Kyle to shoot 40% from three. You're going to have to rely on older Eric Gordon to play like his younger self. It's some things that just realistically, as a GM, as a head coach, you prefer not to count on. Who's going to get cut? I could see Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon getting cut for Imani Bates. Already on the team, already getting acclimated with the system, but you have yet to take foot on a preseason court. Imani Bates should be playing tonight, Friday night, in this preseason matchup. Another player who not only they could think about acquiring, we've talked about Ben Simmons being big news for this team. Why not Ben Simmons being a big acquirable piece for this squad? Why not? Speaking of other players getting cut, guys, Dominic Barlow, Jabari Walker, who Nick Nurse has come out and said he loves both of them. He loves the way both of them have been playing. And apparently Jabari Walker is the better shooter of the two. Dominic Barlow and Jabari, great rebounders, great 6'8" wings who can play defense. But in terms of rebounding and shooting, Jabari Walker may have the upper hand on him, which may be why he has the upper hand in securing that roster spot. Guys, Jabari Walker should definitely get a full-time spot for the power forward position, because this team definitely needs more depth at that powered forward position. And these two-way contracts are great to get some regular season reps, but if you need a playoff player, two-way contracts are just not allowed to take place or not allowed to participate in competitive playoff play. If you're going to need them and if you're going to use them, why not give them the reassurance that they're needed and that they will be used all season and give them a guaranteed entire year contract spot? I could see Jabari, Dominic Barlow, I could see those guys getting some minutes. And I also have been seeing you guys leaving some comments, guys. Thanks for liking. Thanks for commenting. And thanks for watching and subscribing, guys. I want to shout out Bobby King. Bobby King says, I hate to sound like Allen Iverson, but Kelly Oubre needs to get in the gym and practice his threes. Listen, practice does make perfect, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And at this point in Kelly's career, do you really think you can teach him how to shoot the three-point shot more efficiently, more consistently? I want Kelly to prioritize the things that he's great at, the things that he's good at, and amplify those strengths, put more time in them, put more work into them, and let Kelly be Kelly, a great rim attacker, a great finisher at the basket, good fast break starter, and a good defensive creator and officiator and initiator of havoc on the defensive side. That's what Kelly's good at. Shooting has never been his bread and butter. I don't want Kelly wasting time. Alvin Bates says Imani Bates is the new guy. Alvin, if that's your cousin, shout out cousin Imani. I would love for Imani to be a part of this team full-time, long-term, because if you see what Ace Bailey's doing, a 6'8" bona fide scoring guard is what this team could use, any team could use, and Imani Bates could be usable. Terrence Davis says Russ would guarantee a playoff run. Just saying, hey, he's not wrong. If you look at the results and you look at the facts, Russell Westbrook on a team gets them to the playoffs. And Russell Westbrook on a team definitely gets them some high upside play, but it also gets them some downside turnover play. So there's upsides to Russ, there's downsides to Russ, but in Russ, I'm not above trust. I would trust Russ on this team. I also want to shout out Edward King. He says we only pay old, injured players, not young players in shape. We pay young players in shape, Edward, but they also get injured in Philadelphia City, in the Philadelphia building. I don't know if the building's cursed. I don't know what could be worse, guys, but like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be back again with more comments, more conversation, and more videos tomorrow.